Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of ISKCON, chapter 10, text 20. The verse is here. Please chant with us. Aham Atma Udakesha Sarva Bhuta Ashaya Sthitaha Aham Adihi Cha Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Antaha Eva Cha Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Aham Adischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha. Have to chant. Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Aham Adischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Atma Eva Cha Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashayastitaha Ahamadischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha O Arjuna, Sarvabhuta, in all living entities, Ashaya Stitaha, situated within the heart. Aham, I am. Adihi, the origin. Cha, also. Madhyam, middle. Cha, also. Bhutanam, of all living entities. Antaha, end. Eva, certainly. Cha, and. Translation. I am the super soul, O Arjuna, seated in the hearts of all living entities. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Purport. In this verse, Arjuna is addressed as Gudakesha, which means one who has conquered the darkness of sleep. For those who are sleeping in the darkness of ignorance, it is not possible to understand how the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests Himself in various ways in the material and spiritual worlds. Thus, this address by Krishna to Arjuna is significant, because Arjuna is above such darkness. The Personality of Godhead agrees to describe His various opulences. Krishna first informs Arjuna that he is the soul of the entire cosmic manifestation by dint of his primary expansion. Before the material creation, the Supreme Lord, by his plenary expansion, accepts the Purusha incarnations, and from him everything begins. Therefore he is Atma, the soul of the Mahat Tattva, the universal elements. The total material energy is not the cause of the creation. Actually, the Mahavishnu enters into the Mahat Tattva, the total material energy. He is the soul. When Mahavishnu enters into the manifested universes, he again manifests himself as the super soul in each and every entity. We have experienced that the personal body of the living entity exists due to the presence of the spiritual spark. Without the existence of the spiritual spark, the body cannot develop. Similarly, the material manifestation cannot develop unless the Supreme Soul, Krishna, enters. As stated in the Subala Upanishad, Prakrityadi sarva bhutanta yami sarva seshi cha narayanaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is existing as the Super Soul in all manifested universes. The three Purusha avatars are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. They are also described in the Satvata Tantra. Vishnostu trini rupani purushakhyan yato viduhu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests three features as Karanodakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and Kshirodakshay Vishnu in this material manifestation. The Mahavishnu or Karanodakshay Vishnu is described in the Brahma Samhita. Yah karanarnava jale bhajati sma yoga nidram. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, the cause of all causes, lies down in the cosmic ocean as Mahavishnu. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the beginning of the universe, the maintainer of the universal manifestations, and the end of all energy. Aham atma gudakesha sarva bhutashayastitaha. Aham adish Chamadhyam cha bhutanam anta eva cha. I am the super soul, O Arjuna, seated in the hearts of all living entities. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Om jnana timirandhasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshur militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya manobhishtam sthapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyata Padakamalam Shri Guru Navaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna is describing himself in this verse, and in this series of verses he is describing himself to Arjuna. Arjuna has asked Krishna that you please describe about yourself, which is the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is describing about himself. Here Krishna is describing that he's the beginning, the middle and end of everything, which we could concisely understand to mean that Krishna is everything. Generally it's thought, if we ask people, well, what do you understand about God? And usually they'll say, God is everything. Isn't it? I don't have a very clear concept of what it means that God means everything. Here in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is describing in more detail, and in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining what Krishna is explaining, not anything different, the same thing, but he's giving more background understanding as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. What does it mean that Krishna is everything? So Krishna is describing about himself to Arjuna, and Prabhupada in his Bhagavad Gita as it is explaining more according to Shastra and realization. And then anyone else, just like myself in this case today, who speaks on this, should continue to explain about Krishna according to what is understood in Guru Parampara from Shastra, and according to one's realization. Although actually, when we're to speak to others, I'm now supposed to speak something to you about Krishna, isn't it? Yeah. So before I speak, it's also good to have some idea of what are your realizations of Krishna. You're all having realizations of Krishna, isn't it? You must be. You're all chanting Hare Krishna? Is it? Some way, tilak, kunti beads. So that means you have some realization of Krishna. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. No one's paying you to chant Hare Krishna. No one's holding a gun to your head and telling you to chant Hare Krishna. But you're doing because you have some realization, some appreciation for Krishna. So maybe we could hear, some of the devotees here could tell, what are your realizations about Krishna? I'll ask some of you randomly so you can all think. What are your realizations of Krishna? You can say briefly. Radha Govinda Das. You're trying to escape here now. Senior, junior, that is an etiquette. That's also there. But one may be senior or junior in terms of years in Krishna consciousness. But everyone has realizations of Krishna. As I was saying, you wouldn't be chanting Hare Krishna unless you had some realization of Krishna. There must be some realization. So, what do you realize about Krishna?
Well, I have faith in the personalities who have realization. This is my realization. Like Srila Prabhupada. And in speaking, there is a substance in this.
That's a very good realization. Did you all hear that? Everyone heard? You didn't hear. Radha Govinda Das Brahmachari was just saying that he doesn't have so much realization of Krishna. Of course, the devotee will always say like that, even if he has so many realizations. But he was saying that he has his realization is that he has faith in personalities who have faith in Krishna. He was giving the example of Prabhupada when Prabhupada speaks, there's so much substance there. So this is actually a very good understanding for those who deny that there is any God. Then this means, if they what they're saying is true, this means that great personalities like Srila Prabhupada, there have been many great religious personalities in India and in other parts of the world also, many. So they were all simply imagining something foolishly. Is it possible? They wrote so many books of philosophy and so many wonderful prayers glorifying the Lord, and they influenced so many people's lives. So many people, just by coming in contact with great saints, their whole lives changed. Even people who are very atheistic and sinful, by coming in contact with personalities who are filled with love of God, then their whole lives just changed. So how can you deny? There's substance. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Krishna Sri Toma, Krishna Dite Paro, Tomara Shakati Ache. He says, O Vaishnava, you have got Krishna. You can give Krishna. You have the power to do so. So that's one realization of Krishna, that Krishna manifests himself through his devotees. Then, who else? Who would like to say? Would you like to say? What is your realization of Krishna? Rupesh, yeah. Oh, there are so many names. Aish. All names of Krishna. Chandraesh, Rakesh. Actually, Rakesh is a name for the moon. But ultimately, Krishna is the controller of everybody. Then?
I don't have any aspect of realization.
You must be having. Just dig a little deep into your consciousness.
I got convinced this is there.
That's realization.
No more about it.
So your realization of Krishna is that there's something wonderful here. I want to know more. That's a very nice realization.
Presently I am not able to perceive anything.
That's very wonderful, yeah. Many people had such realizations that, especially in the Western countries, many people had that realization. They'll see devotees chanting in the streets and singing very happily. And they think, oh, that's something very wonderful. I don't know what it is, but I want to know more about it. Because you can see the contrast very strongly. Especially on Oxford Street in London, I always have this feeling that so many people from all over the world, and it's like a big black cloud on everyone's head. I mean, generally in England there are black clouds anyway, but even if the sun is shining, the consciousness of the people is just like, they're all so frustrated. And devotees come down Oxford Street dancing and singing, and it's like a big bright light, and everyone can see the difference. It's just completely different. It's not just the dress is different and that they're singing and playing bells, but just the whole consciousness. It's so wonderful. So people can see there's something wonderful here. They've got something. They say, whatever it is, I'd like to be like that. Some of the ladies like to tell any realizations of Krishna. You like to say?
I've never felt such a sense of security.
Can you hear at the back? Yeah.
I've never felt such a sense of security or happiness being with Krishna's devotees and hearing Prabhupada's lectures. That is the best. Very secure. I will hardly just come back and listen to Prabhupada's lectures or something. It just seems it's the best place to be.
It's the best place to be. Feel much security. I was waiting for someone to say this actually, because that's the point I wanted to speak a little bit more about, is that Krishna is our shelter. People come to Krishna, mostly in the modern age especially. Of course people come with different motives, but mostly people who take up Krishna consciousness very seriously, you're saying about security. So it's a feeling of shelter. And Krishna is our shelter. There's no shelter in the material world. We take shelter of our family members, or we take shelter of different designations that, you see, I'm from a good family, I have a good degree, I'm going to get a good degree, and our money, and we identify ourselves like this, but actually inside we feel very insecure. And I think you'll find that more here than in other parts of India, because the artificial prestige is more here. Artificial prestige is very much part of life in Manipal, isn't it? That everyone likes to, how many crores my father's got, and your father's only got 3 crores, and my father has 30 crores. Like this, you're feeling, taking shelter. Our money, our prestige, our caste. I'm from Brahmin caste. The 11th attacks in which they were feeling, we're Americans, we're the most powerful country in the world, no one ever invaded us, no one ever defeated us, at least on our own territory. They lost in Vietnam, but no one actually ever came and did anything to us, and we're so superior. And then some Arabs came. I mean, they weren't even Europeans. They're Arabs from Asia. And the World Trade Center, a symbol of American prosperity. And then they're so afraid. And they're so afraid they don't even want to open their envelope. They're feeling at any time, any time, we don't know, we could just be breathing, the terrorists could get us. They stopped, practically the planes, they stopped flying in planes. Americans were flying here and there, all over, crisscrossing America, always flying. They're so afraid. So it revealed actually that inside, even though they're very complacent and confident, we're American, no one can do anything to us, but inside they're very insecure, full of fear. Our devotees were telling us that actually, see, so many people after that, they used to come and mill around this World Trade Center area. So devotees in New York, they went there and they did Harinam, because that's what devotees do. So many people were coming, okay, chant Hare Krishna, they can hear that. But then, after some days, they sat down like this and they started playing with harmonium, and then they said to people, okay, now we're going to have spiritual therapy sessions. And they were teaching people to chant Hare Krishna. There was tremendous response. They'd have hundreds of people, New Yorkers, who, they don't stop for 1 second. They're just on the move. There's hundreds of them sitting down and chanting with their beads, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So because they're feeling, we need some spiritual therapy. They're looking for some shelter. They realized that everything they had faith in, that we're American, we have the government, we have the army, we have our business, we have the Pentagon, and that got attacked too. No one can touch us. And now they realized they're fallible. The same thing that Prabhupada is preaching, the same thing that you'll get in these books, that there's no security in the material world, everything is fallible. You may be American in this life, and you may be a worm in stool. Maybe American in your next life, maybe not American. There's no security in this material world. Whatever arrangements we make, we have to suffer birth, death, old age and disease. But Pashanapi na pashyati, people don't see. They see but they don't see. This is the trick of Maya. Everyone sees, my father has died, my mother has died. Doctors, they see all the time, people are dying. How many deaths does a doctor see in his life? But still, he's concerned, my prestige, and he's not thinking, I have to die also. Every day he's seeing people die. But he doesn't think, I'm also going to have to die. Or even if he thinks, he blanks it out in his consciousness. Or they make some so-called philosophy that, well, when you die, everything is finished. Why do they say that? Because they don't want to think what happens afterwards. So actually everyone in the material world is feeling very insecure. And we try to make material relationships for the sake of security. Especially family relationships. You think, I'll marry and then we'll have a home and this is my existence. That I will live with my wife or my husband and my children. And this takes up our whole consciousness and way of thinking, and bringing money and getting my children educated and so many things. So that gives some sense of security. Of course, in the modern age, even that false security is very little there, because family life, especially you're all coming from so-called progressive backgrounds. So progressive means more westernized, and westernized means there's no family life practically. Literally, not just figuratively, literally. One of my godbrothers who's preaching in America was telling me that when he talks about family life to people, they just look at you blank, because they never had. Most people are brought up with just their mother, not their father. A mother and a series of boyfriends that she has. And even mostly nowadays people don't get married anyway. They think, well, why bother having a divorce later on? Just don't bother. That's the West. And it's like that in India more and more, especially among the so-called progressive people, because everyone's busy working, and children, well, they're a bit of a nuisance. So, send them off to Manipal, give them a good job, let them look after themselves. Do your best. You should do something for your children. So give them a good education and let them look after themselves. I don't know exactly. Maybe in some cases. I don't want to blaspheme your parents, but these are the kind of attitudes which are coming up more and more. That children, they come home and there's no parents there. They have the key to the door. They come in and they take something out of the freezer and stick it in the microwave and watch the TV, and that's it. That's their home life. So a result of modern life, or the influence of Kali Yuga, or whatever it may be, that relationships are not very strong between people, and even people are friends and then they become enemies. They're husband and wife, and then they become divorced, and like this. So it's a very insecure kind of age, and especially in this area in Manipal where there's so much of this false prestige, it makes you feel very insecure, because people are projecting themselves on the false prestige, on the basis of false prestige. That I feel very confident. You have to show you feel very confident. You have to show that you're on top of the world, no problems. But inside, people have so many anxieties, and so people are feeling very insecure. And Krishna is the shelter. That's the point. The point is that Krishna is our shelter. Whether modern life or traditional life or future life, the actual shelter is Krishna. Of course, modern society has made so many problems. But even without the problems of modern life, still, the problems are always there birth, death, old age and disease. There's always suffering in material life. Modern life has made it more so, that the mental suffering is more. That practically everyone is mentally disturbed, one way or another. Some show it and some don't. But inside everyone is suffering so many anxieties. With some people it comes out in very bad ways. They may apparently be very respectable people in society, but at home they're torturing their children or performing so many perverted activities or whatever. So people are suffering intensely. That is the condition of the modern age. People are suffering intensely. They're confused, but they try to cover it up by living a very fast life. So you jump on a motorbike, rev it up, make a lot of noise, rush off, go to the fast food place and eat something fast, and there's music going ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. So you're all the time, your consciousness is boom, ba-boom, ba-boom, and the adrenaline is running. So you're always jacked up with so much adrenaline running, and if it runs short you can always drop a few pills to get the adrenaline running again. So the people are running, so they're moving fast and exciting life because they don't want to stop and think, actually, what am I doing with life? They're so busy leading a life of illusion in which they deliberately keep themselves in illusion. They don't want to think, actually, what am I? Because the question is too painful to ask. If you actually look at yourself, they'll find just a shadow. There's no substance. There's no meaning to the life. Just I'm trying to impress others how wonderful I am. I'm dressed in the latest fashions. I've got a big bike and I roar around the town. I go to all the concerts. I'm a dedicated follower of fashion. But people don't want to think. But if you start to think, then it becomes frightening. So when you see devotees, then you see that they're actually completely aloof from all this. It's not just the dress is different, or in your case it may not be different, but the consciousness is different. Another of my friends was telling me, devotee, that he's a householder, so he was doing business. And he used to be an advisor to many big businessmen. I mean, people dealing in hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. And one man, he was telling me, he became very friendly with one man, a Swiss man, who was a billionaire, multi-billionaire or whatever. Actually, in America, there are so many millionaires. It's not such a big thing. I think there's 1 million millionaires in America. So these are richer than millionaires, this class of people he was dealing with. So this man, he was trying to tell him, look, I'm just an ordinary guy. I don't have... But he didn't believe him. This man thought he must be having, some many billions of dollars like me, because he was so relaxed. Because only people have so much money that, even if they lose, $10 million here and there, it doesn't make that. Only such kind of people may have a certain kind of relaxation. Although I didn't notice it myself. He was saying, I've also seen very rich people, but they're also like that. But he was so calm. Why? Not because he had billions of dollars, but because he had Krishna. And he wasn't impressed by, he could move with people with billions of dollars and, didn't make any difference to him. He wasn't impressed by them hundreds of millions of dollars. To him, he just said, well, another person. He's in Maya. Hundreds of millions of dollars of Maya. So devotees are different because they have realization of Krishna, that Krishna is our shelter. There are many nice verses in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Srimad Bhagavatam in this regard about Krishna's shelter. Who knows any verse about Krishna's shelter from Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, that doesn't really say about shelter. Say it loudly. Mam ekam sharanam Raja. Now Krishna says, if you come to me for shelter, I will give it. But you have to come to me only, Krishna says. Don't think you can stand under 5 umbrellas at one time. You have to, under Krishna only. Take shelter of Krishna. And Krishna will give you shelter. What is that shelter? Well, the first symptom of that shelter is that Krishna will deliver us from all sinful reactions. Why are people afraid? Well, one reason is because they have so many sinful reactions facing them. People have to, deep in their subconsciousness, everyone knows, there are so many things I have to suffer for. Why are people afraid to die? If they say that, well, everything's finished at death, then why should they be afraid to die? Actually, everyone knows deep in their subconsciousness that they have to face sinful reactions. But Krishna says, I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. Ma shuchaha, don't fear. I'm not bluffing you. Definitely I will give you shelter. There's a very nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam in this regard. There are many, many nice verses. There's one I was just thinking of. Samashrita ye padda pallava plavang mahat padang punya yashomara pavambhitya vatsa padang parang padang badang badang yadvipadang natesham. It's very poetical. Even without understanding, you can hear how nice it sounds. So this verse says that this whole material manifestation is like a great ocean of misery and danger. But if one takes shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, who is Mukunda, the giver of liberation, then this whole material world in which padam padam yadvipadam natesham, padam padam har kadam, every step there is vipadam, there is danger. But for one who takes shelter of Krishna, this vast ocean, which is you can't cross a great ocean. It's not possible. Very dangerous ocean. You can't swim across it. But that whole big ocean becomes like a vatsa padam. It means the size of the calf's hoofprint. Can you understand? Calf's hoofprint. It means if you see a calf's hoofprint, if you're walking, you don't think, how shall I cross it? You don't think of it at all. You just go on walking. You may even step right on top of it and crush it. It's insignificant. This whole material world, which is so dangerous and so difficult, becomes insignificant for a devotee who takes shelter of Krishna. Daivihi esha gunamayi namamaya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. This material nature is very, very difficult to cross over, Krishna says. But one who surrenders to me, for him it is very easy to cross over. So coming to Krishna means to take shelter of Krishna, and that is the position of a devotee. He takes shelter of Krishna. in this material world, everyone is trying to show themselves as very great. I'm very great, I'm very strong, I'm very proud. I don't need to believe in God. I'm great, I'm wonderful, look at me. This is the materialistic way of thinking. But however big and strong we may be, material nature crushes us. Either a big strong nation, America, now they're afraid of a gang of Arabs living in the mountains in Afghanistan. They're so afraid. Practically a gang of bandits, that's all they are. And the whole country is afraid. Or we may be ourselves very strong. There are different ways of being strong. One is physically strong. You have a very big, strong body. Rambo, something like this. But one bullet this size can finish off Rambo. And even, what's the name of that guy? Arthur, what's his name? Schwarzenegger. Something like that. Some funny German name. So however big and strong he is, there'll come a time when his body will shrivel up. He'll be an old man. Of course he might die by some unnatural means, but his body will eventually become weak. I was just telling that story, that sannyasi I met. This was maybe 15 years ago. I met one sannyasi, old man. But you could see that previously he was very big and strong. He told me, when I was your age, I could pick up 3 people your size and throw them the other side of the room. I was a wrestling champion. But now if I want to walk down this anywhere, I have to have one hand on a stick and the other hand on someone else's shoulder. So material nature forces you down. Physically you may be very strong. There are other kinds of strength, financial strength. If you have money, then you can buy a bodyguard, or you can be protected with your big bungalow, compound, guards. Or you may be politically strong. No one can touch you, you may think. Even the court makes some decision against you, but you turn it round again. This is normal in India. That's why when one politician arrests another, they put them in the first class kind of prison, because they know after some time they may arrest me. So better make sure you look after them properly. So political power, there are different kinds of power, but it will all be finished. The only shelter is Krishna. Instead of trying to show, I am very great, the devotee takes pleasure in thinking, I am very small. But Krishna is very great. And I am Krishna's servant. Therefore, I don't care. Whatever anyone says, doesn't matter. I should simply speak the message of Krishna, just like Prabhupada. See, Prabhupada came to the Western countries, and according to any material calculation, he was very weak. Physically, he was an old man. He was very short, about 5'3". What's that in? You measure in centimeters, is it? 65? No. I don't know. That's one thing I never converted my brain. Heights. Anyway, he was very short. And his English, although in many ways it was very good, but his diction wasn't very understandable to people in the West, because the pronunciation was quite different. And the Indian English also, the grammatical construction is quite different to the syntax generally used in the West. And Prabhupada had no financial strength. He had 40 rupees, and you can't use rupees in America. And even if you could, it wasn't very much. And he came from a poor country to America, which is a very rich country. He came to a country which was militarily not very mighty. Just a few years ago, India had been humiliated by China in the northeast. So in all, he didn't have any friends or any society or organization. But Prabhupada, although he might have appeared to be very weak, but he was very strong. Prabhupada said later on that all the other Swamis who went to the West, they started by saying, "You are very advanced." I started by saying, "You're all rascals." So Prabhupada, he was very strong from the very beginning. He said, "What is this cat-dog society? You think you're very advanced, but you're living like cats and dogs." So Prabhupada was very strong because he knew that Krishna is with me. Krishna is protecting me. I've got nothing to fear. Prabhupada's very name, Abhay Charana-Ravinda, is a name for Krishna. It means at whose lotus feet there is fearlessness, no fear. Prabhupada wasn't afraid to go to America in that situation where no friends, no money, no security of any kind. But he had faith that Krishna will help me. In full faith. Prabhupada gave the example of, because you see in the Western countries, people take their dogs for walks. And it's not like in India, when they take them on the lead. Here in India, the dog just pulls them here and there. But in the West, they have more developed dog culture. So they know how to train the dog. So you take the dog for a walk, not that the dog takes you for a walk. So Prabhupada saw that, see, the dogs in the West, they're like very prestigious. The dog is considered a very, prestigious animal. And the dogs, they can feel that, you see. Right, isn't it? You can see the dogs, they feel very important in the West because they're treated like they are a dog. Oh, it's especially pedigree dog. Oh. Mostly they don't keep mongrels. Here in India it's all mongrels. So the Prabhupada is giving the example, the dog feels, he'll bark. Why? Because he feels my master is here. He's protecting me. And Prabhupada, in this regard, he would often quote one very nice verse from Yamuna Acharya, from his Stotra Ratnam, that how does that begin? First line, Prashanti Nishesha Manorathantaram Kadaham Aikantika Nitya Kinkaram Prahashiyasham Sanata Jivitam. He says that by serving you, he's speaking to Krishna, that we become completely peaceful and secure, and all the different tumble of thoughts in our mind becomes very settled, and we become very joyful. So when will I be fortunate enough to consider myself in the position of your eternal servant? And the specific words, sanata, that I will have you as my master. And Prabhupada compared that with the word anata. Prabhupada gave the example of a street dog and a dog with a master. A street dog is a street dog. He's simply, people throw stones at him. He's always looking in the garbage for something to eat. He's very skinny and miserable, and there'll be some disease. He'll be biting for the fleas. Very miserable condition. And at night, when there's no one around then he comes out and barks. And he thinks, you see, now I'm the king. And in the morning again, he's just looking for some garbage. And then they're more quiet in the day. Street dog. Well, he's anata, without a master. And sanata, he has his master. He's just, the dog, his tendency is to take shelter of a master, and then the master looks after him. So Prabhupada, he gave that example that it's one thing we can even learn from the dog, that if you take shelter of your master, he'll look after you. So devotee takes shelter of Krishna, he's perfectly secure. Krishna is looking after me. Feels fully satisfied in understanding that Krishna is looking after me. Then what do I have to fear? And what is the use of taking shelter of anyone else? Rukmini Devi described this very nicely to Krishna, that she was saying to Krishna, what is the use of taking shelter of any person except you? She said that normally a woman in this material world likes to take shelter of a man, but what is the use of taking shelter of someone who, she was specifically saying about princesses, they're taking shelter of princes or kings, but they're taking shelter of what? Just some blood and bones and flesh and muscles covered by some skin with some hair in the form of mustaches and beard, calling themselves a king. But in course of time, that king body will be turned into ashes. It won't. So what she was saying, what is the use? That really we should take shelter of you, Krishna. So Krishna is the ultimate shelter. As Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, that what is that? Pitasya asya jagata mata dhata pitamaha. Krishna says that I'm the father of the universe, the mother, the support, the grandfather. Krishna is everything. Not vaguely, impersonally, but Krishna is really our best friend. And that's another wonderful thing about Krishna, that even though Krishna, so many devotees, but he's personally giving himself to every one of them. Krishna, he gives himself to his devotee. So you may think, well, if Krishna gives himself to his devotee, then what about all the other devotees? But he gives himself to them also, because Krishna is unlimited. So Krishna is our shelter. Do you have any prasad? You have to leave early? Is it? Give a little prasad. So, that's a very good realization, that we should take shelter of Krishna. There's no other shelter. In this material world there is false shelter. No one can protect us. No one can protect us from birth, death, old age and disease. No one can protect us from sinful reactions. No one can protect us from anxiety, illusion, confusion. We may go to a psychiatrist, I'm so confused, but the psychiatrist himself is also confused. But he has to show that actually I'm not confused. We go to the doctor for shelter from some disease, but they can't protect you from death. So better to take shelter of Krishna. This is good realization. And we should increase our faith in that. Sometimes it requires a lot of faith, because sometimes people think that, well, we'll take shelter of Krishna and then I won't have any more material problems. But that's not the way Krishna gives shelter. Sometimes Krishna, he sends more material problems so that we'll take shelter of him more and more. Because as long as we're in this material world, or as long as we're in material consciousness, we're always thinking that well, I could try and enjoy this material world just a little bit more. But Krishna makes arrangements for his sincere devotees that they realize that actually there's no one, there's nothing but Krishna and his devotees. We shouldn't think that devotee association is material association. When we associate with devotees, that means they're also helping to give us Krishna's association, because Krishna manifests through his devotees. So some of you have to go, is it? Or have time limits, examinations? You have to go back to the hostel or something like that, is it?
Actually, I'm not going to my grandparents' place. They won't allow me to tell.
I see. They don't want you to take shelter of Krishna. They're thinking, we are giving shelter, then why any other shelter? So sometimes we have to make a balance between these different kinds of shelters. At least superficially, sometimes we may satisfy others. Yes, but actually our shelter should be Krishna. Alright, anyone else like to express any of their realizations about Krishna? Anything? Krishna Prasadam? You like Prasadam? You like Kirtan? Sorry? You like Prasad, that's good. Like Prasad means that we shouldn't like anything else. Only Prasad. That means even if someone offers, here is some very nice food, but if it's not Prasad, a devotee thinks, I'm not interested. I only like to take Prasad. Because he's taken shelter of Krishna. Any questions about this? Anything?
Maharaj, when you say that the person is sincere in Krishna gives him more material difficulties, that he takes shelter of Krishna.
Yeah, he may do. Krishna may do. Generally for those who are somewhat more advanced.
What if what if they don't, and what if they just get influenced and they don't end up taking shelter of Krishna and they just take material difficulties?
Well, that's a test. Someone may, being given more tests, they may fail the test. It means that we have to choose. At every moment we have to choose to be Krishna conscious or not Krishna conscious. Now when we're faced with various difficulties, the experience of that may be so intense that despite our training in Krishna consciousness, we don't see Krishna behind it. So that's why we should always learn to take shelter of the devotees of Krishna. If we think, I'll take shelter of Krishna directly, we may not have a very strong connection actually. It may not be as strong as we think. There's always a tendency of neophyte devotees to think that they're more advanced than they actually are. So it's very important that we keep association with devotees who help each other in times of difficulty. Help each other means there may be some physical help also, but especially spiritual help in the form of encouraging devotees in difficulty to remain strong in Krishna consciousness, to see everything from a Krishna conscious philosophical viewpoint. A test is a test. It doesn't mean you automatically pass it. You have to prepare for the test. And the test means we have to decide, at this point, am I going to surrender to Krishna more and more, or am I going to back off and become more materialistic. There may be a test, and we may think, well, Krishna is not sheltering me, let me take more shelter of material nature. What was the use of chanting Hare Krishna? Now I'm suffering so many material difficulties, so let me be realistic, we think. Not understanding that reality is that we are eternal spirit souls, and that material problems come and go. Whatever material problem we have, it won't last. And whatever material facility we have, it also won't last. You may be a double crore party or whatever it is, but the money won't last. And you may have 2 crores of problems, but they also won't last. They'll go, and new problems will come, as long as we're in material life. But it will all pass away. You see, even there may be such problems that they go on throughout the life. There may be, for instance, you may suffer paralysis, and that may continue. Part of your body may remain paralyzed for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean you can't chant Hare Krishna, unless it's in your jaw. Even then you can chant mentally. There's nothing to stop us being Krishna conscious, whatever the problem may be. We may have severe debts, and we should understand it's some kind of karma. Krishna is reminding me this material world is miserable, so I have to struggle with these debts. What to do? I should still go on chanting Hare Krishna. At some point in time you'll be released from that body, and then you'll be released from the debts that go with the body. Then you'll get another body. Or if you go to Krishna, you'll get a spiritual body. So a devotee learns to be transcendental with philosophical outlook. And actually, when there are tests, then if we take shelter of Krishna, then it becomes very sweet. When we feel we have no other shelter but Krishna, let me remain at Krishna's lotus feet. There's actually more sweetness in that. If we have nothing in this material world, and we just, oh Krishna, you're my all in all. Therefore Krishna is called Akinchana-dham, as one name for Krishna. People who have nothing in this material world, their only wealth is Krishna, and they're fully satisfied. Whereas we find people, they have so much money but they're completely unsatisfied because they don't have Krishna. Any other questions? No? So we'll chant Hare Krishna some more. Might have some standing kirtan.